अस्सलामु अलैकुम। मैं फैसल अजीज़, रिसर्च स्कॉलर, डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ सोशियोलॉजी, मौलाना आज़ाद नेशनल उर्दू यूनिवर्सिटी। नाजरीन, मैं आप तमामी हजरात का इस प्रोग्राम रिसर्च मेथडोलॉजी वर्कशॉप में तहे दिल से शुक्रगुजार हूँ और इस्तकबाल करता हूँ। नाजरीन, हमारे इस रिसर्च मेथडोलॉजी वर्कशॉप का ये चौथा रोज़ है। गुज़श्ता 3 रोज़ में हमने मुख्तलिफ रिसोर्स पर्सन्स को सुना और उनसे इस्तिफ़ादा हासिल किया। नाजरीन, हमारे आज के इस सबसे पहले इनागुरल सेशन में मैं इनागुरल वर्ड के लिए डॉक्टर सईद मियो सर, असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ सोशियोलॉजी से गुजारिश करता हूँ कि वो स्टेज पे आएँ और चंद अल्फाज रिसर्च मेथोडोलॉजी वर्कशॉप के बारे में बताएं। डॉक्टर सईद मियो सर।
Thank you, Faisal, for inviting me. I welcome you all for this 1-week research workshop. It's a good workshop on research methodology where we are understanding different nuances of research. As we all know that research is a process through which we generate knowledge, we evolve our understanding about society and its structure, its functions. This workshop, I'm sure that will be very much helpful to understand research as a process, as a constructive mechanism to understand society. I'm really appreciable about this. Dr. Ziauddin, who is coordinating this research workshop, has gathered a lot of good resource persons to talk about research and its various dimensions. Just to take a brief recap, let me inform you all and the speaker of the day that so far we have discussed about the qualitative dimensions of the research and the ways how to write a dissertation, how to write a report. And we have also so far talked about hypothesis, reliability, and validity in research process. And we have also listened to a speaker, a very good speaker from JNU on the issues of hypothesis. And also we have listened one speaker on empirical methodology, its framework, and its different techniques to do research. And today we have a very emerging, a very renowned scholar from University of Lucknow, Dr. Saroj Kumar Dahal, to speak about current trends and challenges in social science research. I welcome you, Dr. Saroj, in this 1-week workshop. I'm sure that from your speech, from your lecture, our students, the participants of this workshop will be greatly benefited. So I now request Faisal to briefly introduce the speaker. Please, Faisal.
Thank you, sir. It's an honor for me to introduce our today event speaker. Today we have Dr. Saroj Kumar Dahal, is teaching sociology at University of Lucknow. Before he has associated with, he sir has his postgraduated from JNU and MPhil from Delhi University and PhD from Delhi School of Economics. Sir has visited California University, California State University, USA, National University of Singapore, Kyoto University, and the Shisha University of Japan to present his paper. Sir has published many research papers in various journals and edited books. Sir has actively involved in various research projects funded by ICSSR, UGC, and other international institutions. His research interests includes migration, diaspora, gender, labor development, methodology, tribe, and civil society. Now, I invite Dr. Saroj Kumar Dahal sir to deliver his presentation on current trends and challenges in social science research. Thank you, sir. I again welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Faisal. And at the outset, I must thank my dear friend, Dr. Ziauddin, and also his colleagues at Maulana Azad National Urdu University. And also I thank all the members those who are associated with the workshops. And I welcome all the participants, researchers, and students of university. It is really a pleasure to speak on research methodology to all the research scholars and participants of this workshop. Almost you have heard many researchers, many intellectuals regarding research. And what I would believe today, I must share something from my core area of interest with respect to the research methodology. But at the same time, I must confess that as we have witnessed, the society has been changed from a very traditional, conventional society to a postmodern society. So, in that context, it is indeed to understand the research we have been doing, or there are people, those who have done different researches from a very conventional society or a traditional society to a postmodern society, it's not necessarily going to be the same phenomenon. There are changes, there are challenges. If you go back to the era of MN Srinivas, if you go to that experience of Rampura village during Srinivas period of research, and today if we send to our research scholars or researchers, or even we visit to that village, so definitely we'll find there are huge changes in terms of approach, in terms of the techniques, in terms the way he collected the data or information, and we are going to. I'm not marginalizing any researcher's idea of taking or collecting the data or information from the field, but the important part is that how we can change our approach, how there is a change in our perspective to understand the real research. Because research is no more confined to any subjects, it is completely an essential and inevitable part of every field. Though we understood the research from a positivistic approach, from Auguste Comte idea that how the social science can be understood or can be researched from a natural science perspective, why we understood that the idea of Auguste Comte is important, because we wanted to have the objectivity in our research. Why it was required to have an objectivity? Because that will give an emphasis to the output, to the research outcomes, or further, it can applicable to our policy orientation or any plans and programs adopted by government or different national, international agencies. So research is not simply a part of university system to get a degree. Rather, it has a relationship to the larger aspect, the society, to the state, to the government, and to the international organizations. So usually we, as a learner or researchers, we feel that we need to go the field and collect some data and we'll submit our thesis or dissertation, and that is the end of our research. But now it is not like that. There is a complete paradigm shift in terms of approach, that how we collect information, why we should collect, what type of research area we should focus, and what are the things we must focus during our research work, even post research. In one way, we find that technology has a given new dimension to our research. That means almost in social science research in Indian context, earlier we did not have any statistical or any technological input in our research. If you go back to 10 years, 20 years, 30 years back, people did not have any technical skills. Only what we understand, the qualitative research or the anthropological field work, go talk to the people, stay in the field, write your information in your diary, and come back and put into a thesis by putting it a theoretical framework. But today it has changed. Almost all of you are aware of huge number of research techniques, the research softwares we have in our libraries, in our institutions, in international agencies. But also we can question that if all these things, the technical inputs or softwares, is it a question, is it making a question to our fundamental core area of research that all these are taken care of by the technology or the idea of capitalism, that those who are having the means of productions in terms of the softwares, who is going to have the ownership of the all the research and techniques, and who are the people they are controlling all the research softwares, and who are the people eligible to buy, and for what purpose they can use. So there are huge international agencies are working. That's a symbol of capitalism, that research is no more a poor researcher's work. It has a relationship with larger market capitalism. Even people are working with software and different MNCs. There are also research and development cell, and they are working with huge amount of funds. And who are the people sponsoring? And once we are getting all these informations from the field, and that is going to be used for a larger benefit of the society. The way earlier field work data, if you read about the earlier researchers, whether Aman Srinivas or A.M. Shah, or those who are very foreground Indian sociologists, pioneer thinkers, they did not have that type of ideas that once all the research and techniques has a relationship with market capitalism or market forces, and that is a relationship with larger social institutions and the university structures. So almost all the universities now they are following the SPSS. Why? Because these are the softwares sold by the international market agencies, and our universities has to buy it. And it is not simply a normal researcher's way to understand the research. It is an expensive research. What we call collaborative research, what we call quantitative research, but it has a relationship with market economy. That is one way. And also another important dimension, that whatever the conventional way of giving the theoretical frame to do research or to conduct research or to get informations, that has been deconstructed. If you use the idea of Derrida's idea of deconstruction, it is theoretical, but at the same time, we can use that we can deconstruct the idea of the conventional research as it is constructed from the fundamental researcher's point of view. It is no more that you have to stay in the 3 years, and after that you come back and write, and you take 7 years, 6 years. And there are today we find lot of techniques, lot of tools, lot of technical digital way of collecting data and informations, and huge number of people are working to circulate, to edit, to analyze, and to synthesize all our data. The data is no more confined to one village, one district. It has gone beyond that. There are people, those are working in the field of demography, NFHS, NSS, even Census of India. Thousands people are working to analyze all the informations we collect. One single data, whether it is caste, religion, community, family, household, or anything. So there are number of ways you are eligible to inculcate with all the technical software packages, and that can help us to understand the larger essence of the data It is not simply one unifying or one dimensional to understand the value of data or the output of data. It is larger dimension to understand the data. But when we understand the idea of positivistic, that why it was important to have the research, because it started with objectivity, but when there are people like Karl Popper, Thomas Kuhn, Paul Ferrament, they all criticized. They all criticize the fundamental dimension of objectivity or the scientific or the natural scientific way of collecting data and information. It has been looked at from very different perspective, that how Karl Popper wanted to falsify the idea of falsification. It is not simply the universalizing the data, it has to be falsified, because that is the strength of your research, that how much you have the capacity to criticize the existing data, and that can give an immense options to understand the validity and utility of data. The data and the output, it's not simply a dominating mode of the conventional research, that it has an essence to control the larger researchers, but all the critics of positivism explains that there is an every possibility to deconstruct or to criticize the existing idea of objectivity in way of that how the natural science has been accepted, the way you conduct or the empirical data you collect as informations from your field. Beyond that, it is an essential way to understand that how the idea of interpretative science means, you can take the idea of Verstein from Weberian approach to phenomenological approach, that it was also essential to understand the real essence of research. Why? Because it is not simply the debate between objectivity and subjectivity, it is also that we have an option to interpret in a multiple ways. When you understand the postmodern reality of research, it gives multiple options to understand, to interpret. It is not simply one way to look at the data or another way to look at the data. Rather, it gives multiple options to understand the data. It is not simply the way it is existing, the author has given or the researcher has given. It is also you and me as a researchers, every possibility of criticizing and reinterpreting, renaming, reframing the data and analysis as per the requirement of the larger benefit of the society. Why it was essential? It was essential because the more you interpret, the more you have the probability to getting the inner depth of our research and data. If you don't interpret, if you don't have an option to interject or falsify, then it is very difficult to get the new meanings, the new way of understanding the data, the new way of understanding the field. And that is why the challenge of the research and researcher has been changed. It is not simply that the way you ask the question, the field will give the right informations. Suppose I visit a slum and asked one of our field member that whether you watch particular serial or picture, or do you use fridge or refrigerator for cold water. So the direct questions is not going to be essentially correct to get the correct answer. They may not reveal how the reality has to be checked, how the real data can be collected. Simply you and me ask and they will say, and that is not the sole purpose of the research today, because everything can be manipulated, everything can be edited, everything can be a false data. Even it is larger, It is huge, but the important aspect of the data is the authenticity of the data. So that is why we have the idea of the triangulation method. You must be aware of that you must use more than one or two methods to understand the accuracy of data. That whether you collected some information from the field, it is true or false. So there can be a triangulations where you can understand the accuracy of a data, how much it is true, how much it is appropriate, and then only you can understand the real interpretation or real analysis. Otherwise, false data, huge data with no evidence of truth and falsification, then it is very difficult to get the real output, and that is no more going to be useful for any research output purpose or any policy oriented work. So almost all the research agencies now working to get the real data. It is not simply quantitatively huge, but at the same time, the data should be real, factual, means exact as it is existing in the field. There are many chances, many occasions you find there are a lot of agencies. They collect the information through digital way, Google uh, questionnaire or schedule, and you collect information, larger data. But we cannot understand that the real essence of all those data has something validity or in terms of the accuracy that we cannot sure about. Almost all the market agencies, the all MNCs, they wanted to have a software and they want to collect information from the larger mass. What type of car you use, what type of problems you face, what is the consumption of your petrol or diesel, whatever. So such type of data is not the real data what we look for from a social science perspective. The social science has a larger dimension. Why? Because it has a relationship with the society. It is not simply defining the market economy, it has a relationship with the larger aspect of the society, and it has a relationship with the approach we understand, and we create some universal concept out of our research data. So the important part from the current research that we must revisit some general areas of concerns in contemporary social science research, and also to review some of the emerging shifts in social science research, especially in emerging market economic, including some of the noted implications for the benefit of future research in the field. That it is not simply for our degrees, for our simply the basic agenda of our research to get a degree or to submit our thesis, but it has a larger dimension, that how it can be helpful to understand the larger dimension of the society or social implications, whether you do research on religion or caste or family or uh, any topics, whatever we choose. When we question the social science research, why? Because there is always a superiority from the physical science or the natural science. The hierarchy we have established between the natural science and the social science, that also creates the fundamental difference between the social science research and natural science research. Why? Because not due to the cognitivity of the subject, rather in natural science or physical science, there is a politics, propaganda, and brainwashing techniques that exist in physical science or natural science research. But there are a lot of medical science, lot of natural science, they have now collaborated with the social science, sociobiology, socio-neurology, socio-behavioral science, that how sociology, psychology, and other social science has given an important input to medical science research, to natural science research, to market research, to management research, and to engineering science as well. And this is the new way of looking that social science is not simply looking at from the societal perspective, rather it has a relationship with a larger dimension of other science, other behavioral subjects, other engineering and technological aspects, and that is why we must rethink the research and the uh, the way we understood the research in earlier sense. It has to be changed, it has to be relooked. Another important aspect I would like to uh, focus, that the values and the norms which is part of our research, whether it is transmitting or not, why there should be a transmitting of values and norms that is established in our research. There are 3 4 important dimensions to understand that why there is an ownership of scientific knowledge. The scientific knowledge we created from our research, there is a ownership, but this ownership should not be market driven or money driven, or it should not be part of the larger capital force. It should be a common ownership. That means every individual has a right to understand the scientific knowledge. If you are creating for the benefit of the society, it should have a relationship with close proximity to the every individual of our society. There should not be a barrier. As I can give you the idea that why natural science has been dominant in our people's mind, even in layman's mind, because it has created that boundary. It has created that boundary between the common man and the researchers, those who are scientists in physical science or natural science. So they have given that, they have not given that much conducive sphere to interact, to interject with the common people. And that is where we understand that whatever we created from our research, it should be appropriate to the common people. It has to be associated with the common man. It has to be associated with every individual. Whatever we collect, the information from our research or from our whatever survey, whatever theory we create, but it has a relationship with every common individual of our society. That is one important way to understand the values and norms of the current research. Then the second important aspect I wanted to focus, that all scientists, means all the researchers, can contribute to the advance of knowledge. Advance of knowledge means it has a relationship with larger benefit of the discipline. It is not simply about me and you get the degree. It has a relationship with that sociology of knowledge, the larger body of knowledge we create, and that can benefit to our fellow scholars, fellow researchers, new young generations, further students, those who are coming to have the research. So that must have a relationship with that, that whatever we create, whatever we contribute, it has to be appropriated with the understanding of the knowledge we create. It should not be controlled by only the best institutions or dominant institutions. That if we focus all these Scopus journals, all these things are controlled by Gesture or some international journal agencies or the copyrights they only take, then how the normal students, the graduate, postgraduate students, they will be not benefited from such huge journals, because there are a lot of colleges and universities, they may not access to the larger expensive discourse of all these research journals and outputs. So that means all we must contribute to the advance of the knowledge, and that should be associated with every scholars, every students, every researchers, so that they can apply to further research. Then another important dimension, that whatever we do for our research, it's not with the personal gain. It is not simply that I'm a researcher and I have got some huge publications and research and I will be acknowledged, but that should be beyond that. Why? Because it has a larger benefit of the society, that everything I produce from our research, it should give some positive dimension to our society and social prospects, social understanding, social values, and that should be a constructive way. That for the sake of research, if anything I produce or you produce or any researcher produce, it has some negative relation to the society, so that should not be a positive aspect of my research. It should give some positive dimensions. So every research output must focus that how we can contribute for the benefit of the society. That should be the larger goal of our research output. It should not be for the personal purpose or personal gain, rather it should have some larger benefit of the society. Then another important dimensions, that whatever we collect from our field or research, that should be critically examined before we accept. As much as criticisms, as much as critically look to that field or data or the information we collect from the field, it should be looked from the critical angle. It should not be accepted that one of the giant researchers who is very famous in terms of name and fame, but that not necessarily that whatever it is collected, whatever is written by somebody, it is going to be accepted. It should be critically looked. Whoever the researchers, the best researchers might be or maybe whoever, but it should be looked as much as critical dimensions. And that is where we find the idea of the deconstruction, that it is not simply the output of research must be looked from the researcher's point of view, or the name, the brand, the dominant figure attached to that research. It should not be looked from that angle. Rather, it should be holistically looked at. Whatever the critical points can be taken care of, and that must be emphasized. It's not to be accepted for the sake of acceptance. The acceptance must be after critically examining every data, everything we collect informations. Then another important way to look at our research, that what should be the core value of our research. Core value in the sense that whenever we do any research, what are the important points we must remember? The first important, as we understand the objectivity, why it is required. Objectivity can give a scientific dimension to acceptance or universalization of our data. That it is not simply the data which doesn't have an universalization or a larger implication benefit from our societal perspective. It should have some objectivity to understand the scientificness of our data. Then second important part of the core value of research is the honesty, the integrity that is associated with our research. Honesty and integrity means that how much we are sincere to our research, how much we are sincere to our field, how much we are sincere to our informations we collected from the field. So there must be an honesty. Honesty is an important dimension to have a proper data, because that will give a larger benefit to the work when you submit your thesis or when you are writing for your publications. That will give a better dimensions. Otherwise, copying, pasting, manipulating on your way, or you put any technical way to just restructure the sentence and you write, or you put your data to analyze. That is not the honesty. So that's why almost all the institutes, all the journals now, accepted journals, they are giving importance to the plagiarism. Why? Because earlier it was not given an important dimension. Today it is required, essential. By looking at, when we use technology, it can be also used for the negative purpose of the science, and also it has also positive dimension of the scientific research. So once we use negatively, so there can be a larger chance of copyright problems or the plagiarism issue. So that can be avoided when we put honesty in our research, when we put integrity in our research work to collect information that gives a positive way of our output. Then the third core value of our research is openness. Why openness? Openness means that how much you are open to criticisms. Your data, your concept, your theoretical inputs, everything you do. So if you find some people, those who are so much critical to your work, so that will give a better dimension. And that is the real strength of your research. If I cannot criticize your data, if I cannot criticize your work, so that is nowhere is going to be a positive or benefit for the further research. So sometimes our supervisor or research mentors, they always suggest us, talk to people, those who are critical to you. It is not your friends or those who are close peer groups who are not able to criticize your work. So there are some researchers, some fellow colleagues, some of the important teachers and faculties, they always look at your work from a very critical. It seems very demoralizing, but it is a positive output that how much you are open to criticisms. Every phase, every chapter must be criticized before put into thesis submission. If you show it to many people, to many researchers, and there are a lot of people, they can criticize your work, and that you take it in a positive way, and this is the openness of your work. So somewhere, new people, those who are writing new books or new research articles, they always put into the discussion. Why? The debate and discussions that will create a further dimension of the research. That can enrich your work, that can enhance your idea of reflecting the output of your work. And that is why openness is required, and it is an indispensable part of your research in today's context. Then the fourth important core value is about the accountability. That how much transparency of your data and work and research, and that accountability must be ensured. So these are the dimensions when I say it is not necessarily in terms of other fields. Now it is very much essential to our research that accountability must be there. Why you put your questionnaire and schedule in your research? Why it is essential to keep all the data and records you collected from the field? Why it is essential to get the consent of the field, those who are subject of your field, because that gives an accountability to your work. For what purpose you are doing, what you are doing, what is the way you are doing, are you following all the norms of your research ethics or not? So all these things giving you an accountability of your work and data. So it is not simply defining the idea of good research, it also defining a good idea of a good researcher. That good research is also a product of good researcher. So that is accountability is an essential part to understand the betterment of your current research. Then another important dimension is fairness. You may find some overlapping of these terminologies, but there are differences to understand that how much you are fair to your work. Fairness means how you collect information, how you interpret your data, whether for the sake of criticisms you are doing or not, whether for the sake of doing a research or not. So there should be fairness. There should not be any biasness, neither from your caste, nor from your religion, nor from your socio-economic background. The biasness should not be part of your research. You should take a fair ground. Your ground should be neutral. You forget about pre-assumed conception and assumptions and notions you carry before you do the research. That everything you do in the research, you should be free from your assumed facts, what is already existing in your mind. So there should be fairness. Fairness in terms of you listen. You are not going to impress the other one. You are not there to convince, to give such type of data. You are there to listen, to hear them out. That the real thing should come out. So that fairness should be there, that there should not be any biasness from your point of view to understand the real data collection or to understand the real essence of your research work. Then the another important dimension is about the stewardship. Stewardship means that how much you have the belongingness to your work. Belongingness means that you take care of your work, that how much you have given that strength to your work. You know how much dedication you have put into your work. You know how much commitment you have put into the work, and that gives the stewardship, that you live with the data, sleep with the data, you understand the data, talk data, and that becomes a gold mine. Up, whenever you feel there are a lot of things you have, but things should not be only an ownership of the material benefit. It should have some belongingness that you collected, and you have the right to understand that, to interpret that, and put into a proper framework. It should not be only for the sake of your degree and you are doing it. It should have some belongingness that your strong hard work, commitment, and dedication has given such emphasis to your work, and that gives the better understanding of your work and output. Having said that all these researches we do in the current postmodern society, it has a relationship with the current mindset, the political economy, the political structure of our society. Postmodern society is not simply a society, the change in structure or change in terms of the economic sense of the society, but it has a relationship that how we have changed in terms of the way of thinking, the way of manipulating, the way of editing, the way of restructuring, the way of using different language, different words. When you understand the idea of the logocentrism, that what terms, what type of language you use in our field, it has multiple meanings. Unlike the traditional conventional way of earlier, if somebody says, and you understand, because we are living in a shared world, every terminology has a one meaning, and we are consider that is the shared word. But today, every word has multiple meaning. If you understand the idea of Derrida's signifier and signified, if you know it, the idea of that when you understand the word from a signifier point of view, in a structural, in a Levi-Strauss perspective, the meaning is very much conventional. But from a postmodern perspective, they signified that creates multiple meanings, many meanings, huge number of alternatives we create. So that single water, suppose I say, I need a glass of water. You visit a house in your field and say, I need a glass of water. So that glass of water means the conventional meaning from a Levi-Strauss perspective. If you know the idea of Levi-Strauss, it is very much conventional that you are thirsty, you want glass of drinking water. But in a postmodern society, the glass of water has a many meanings. You need, why you need, for what purpose, what type of water you need. That means I'm giving an example that the way we use different terminologies in our research, in our questionnaire, in our survey schedules, so that creates huge confusion because the postmodern society has given that option have multiple meanings, has multiple way of understanding, and that is why a glass of water having huge meanings. The water, which type of water? Normal water, boiled water, RO water, cold water, deep freeze water, ice water. It can have multiple meanings. If you understand the idea of signifier and signified, then another important dimension, when you look at your research from a postmodern perspective, that the discourse, the idea of Foucault's idea of discourse, that earlier there are a lot of fields we did not have part of in our research. So now everything we put into the discourse, whether it is sexuality, whether it is criminality, whether it is about mad or madness. So all these things now becoming part of our research. So earlier it did not have that much significance. People are very much clear about village study, caste study, religion study, family study. But today people are having multiple options because in a postmodern society, a lot of things we have put into the discourse. The discourse means we are putting in our syllabus, in our mainstream. Discourse means we are put into every private life, private sphere, also part of our research work. If you read some of the international current journals, how they are doing research on homosexuality, they are doing research on prostitutions, they are doing research on sexual orientations, they are doing research on different types of, from polygamy to monogamy to sologamy. So all these things, new dimensions, because these are the part of our discourse. So earlier, there are many things in our research fields, it has restrictions or considered to be taboo, that we don't put into our discourse, we don't put into our discussions lot of things. We are very much shy about our work. So today, girls, the young researchers coming out, any religion, any caste, they come out with new ideas, the new research areas. It is not simply that earlier the research fields are very much fixed, very much one-dimensional. Now it has many things. Many things. If you want to do some good researchers, so there are a lot of new fields has emerged in a postmodern societies. And that gives to the strength of your research work and publications. If you want to do on different dimensions, you know, when people started the research on marriage, if you go by an Indian traditional society, there are caste endogamous marriage caste endogamy. But now people has come into the sex endogamy marriage. That paradigm shift, you understand that when people studied the same caste marriage systems in Indian village or Indian society, so now there are researchers coming out that they are doing research on same-sex marriage. So it's a new dimension. Why? Because it has given a new options to understand the society in a new way. This is about the postmodern way to look at, to understand the new areas of field. So all the young researchers, they must find out some new unconventional, adventurous research field that will give a further benefit to our researchers and research publications. That it is not simply denying the fundamental core area of research, but also signifying the changing dimension of our research, changing dimension of our social systems, social values. We are no more confined to caste, religion, and family, or rural development, or urban, or slum. It has multiple dimensions to understand. All these concepts given by Foucault, when he talks about the idea of madness of civilizations, that how the discipline and punish, you go and visit today's any jail and you compare with the earlier period, the panopticon structure of the jail, that's a complete change. We have put into the surveillance, that how the jail systems has given a new dimension to our jailmates or so-called criminals or convicted criminals. Despite of that, they are not alienated. They are considered to be part of the society. So all the researchers today, those who are doing on the crimes and criminals, they are visiting the jails, they are talking to these people, and there is a process of rehabilitation through your research work and output. It is not simply looking at with an odd eye or conventional eye or some policing framework or a convicting framework. It is a relationship with a new dimensions. Same, the idea of the med, earlier it was considered to be the outskirt, alienated, subjugated, subordinated. In any sense, they are marginalized. They are part of the medical science research. They are part of the behavioral science research. There are many psychologists. They are busy with researching all these mentally disordered people, mentally and problematic individuals, that there can be a possibilities of new way of looking at change and changing dimensions of their views. Why I'm looking at the research from a postmodern perspective? Because the society has changed and it has to be changed, and you cannot stop that. The caste, the religion is no more as it was. There are huge dilutions. The way religion has been studied by T.N. Madan. T.N. Madan studied religion, and now you study the religion and religion conversion. The way caste has been studied by M.N. Srinivas, and today you study the caste. The way Iravati Karve studied the family, or M. Shah studied the family, and today you studied, there is a complete new dimension. Digital family, digital keychain, virtual family, all these things are the new dimensions to understand the family structures. There are a lot of new technological terminology we use in our research, and that gives a better understanding of our strength of our research. It is neither denying the existing research, rather it gives a better acceptance and new dimension, new perspective to our positive and future research. So we must create that much conducive openness atmosphere that will have a significant benefit to our current researchers. And I believe all these young researchers, those who are part of this workshop, they will be benefited from such workshop where you find huge change and changing dimensions. It is not simply as it is existing qualitative and quantitative, empirical, field work, primary data, secondary data. It has to be looked at from beyond all these things. If you know about the grounded theory or ethnography, multi-sited ethnography, there are also huge changes, all these ideas of research. Why? Because it was essential to look at all these critical dimensions of the research. So it is not simply the questionnaire and schedule that will justify your data. It has to be looked at from a larger dimension of your work and research. So both the technological tools as well as your research ethics can give a better dimension to the modern researchers or postmodern researchers. And that will have a significant role for the larger benefit of the society. I thank you all. Thank you, all the organizing members and researchers. And I expect if anybody is having any doubt or any comments, any suggestions, I welcome. And within 1 hour, whatever I wanted to deliver, I tried my best. And if you feel anything you can ask, I'm ready to take all these questions, whatever you feel. I welcome all of your suggestions and comments and questions. Thank you so much. I'm not audible, sir. Yes.
It's not audible. Yeah, yeah, it is audible now.
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Saroj, for your very elaborate and comprehensive understanding of the research process. You very aptly, talked about the way society evolves. So are the research processes, and you have very educatively given enough food for thought. Various clues for the participants uh, to ask questions and raise queries. And you have aptly mentioned that the way technology has advanced and how technology is actually become a very singular mediating process in research, and who controls this technology. And also very aptly you ask this question: who controls various knowledge domains, for instance the Scopus Index journals? And who is the funder, who is the funding agency, and what are the outcomes of those researches then? And there are also questions around sponsorship, acceptance, and accountability. And there are a lot of issues and questions around the new areas, neurology, socio behavioralism, and various issues that has emerged in the postmodern society. For instance, you talked about sex endogamy, like same-sex marriages. And then of course I
Yes.
actually can say without any hesitation that there are also issues with of choices, consumerism, and then what you also said, digital family and digital kitchen. And there are the way actually we have studied in the caste, religion, society, culture in the past, the things have changed now. So and then there are a lot of challenges of doing research in postmodern society. You rightly invoked this the idea of Derrida, difference and deconstruction, and then Foucault. I'm sure that our participants have a lot of questions to ask. Now this house is open for questions, so participants are requested to ask questions to the speaker, please.
Thank you,
Yes,
sir, for
please.
this wonderful lecture. Actually, my question is in the same tune, sir asked about the ownership control of these big giants, or uh, also you mooted the idea that technology is actually which has brought a lot of changes in the way research is being carried out. So, my question is that in terms of accessibility, I mean, these tech giants have created a huge inequality in terms of the accessibility of data, and they're collecting unstructured data in real times, and also by big minds to analyze and structure these data, whereas uh, researchers are still following these updated traditional research tools to collect that data. So my question is regarding this data collection. Will it still be relevant? Data collection will still be relevant in coming years, because or we will just be reduced as analysis of these big giant companies. Thanks.
Uh, Very important questions in the sense that when I started my talk, that who is the owner of all these research outputs, it has a significant relationship with the political economy and the market structures. We are driven by. If you go by some international agencies and institutions, they are funding huge money, and for the sake of not to give the better dimension to the society, rather they wanted to ownership of have that ownership of that all knowledge we create or we have created through our data. The problem is that when our institutions and universities or the structures are privatized, they also expect the fund that should be come out. So earlier, education and research and research data are not given, or there is not a direct relationship with the profit making situations. But now our government, our policymakers, our international agencies, they are also tuned with the political economy of the research. So when you collect information, if all these information has a larger dimensions of the society, so now the university will take that ownership. So if the university take that ownership, means directly or indirectly the state gets that ownership. That means it is your work, your data, but it has a relationship with the political economy of the structure. But that doesn't mean that you don't have right to reanalyze, reinterpret the data. You are the sole author of your data. You can publish it in a good journal. You can make it a better research policy oriented work that can have a significant impact from any international agencies or the government. So they can talk to you. So now they can sponsor you huge support or any type of project fellowship, so that you will be driven to the political economy, that whatever you are now going to work for this, so that has a relationship with the state and the government, and that will create another dimension of your work. You started your work as a researcher, as a sincere researcher, but when you understood that I did a very good work, when your institutions, your supervisor understood is a great work, then they also supported you for your publications. Now it has a huge impact over the society, other readers, other institutions, and that can have also larger impact of your work. You will be acknowledged definitely, but if you will be controlled by the political economy, the sponsorship of the funds, projects by UGC or ICSR or any government or non-government organizations, so now you will be sold out your data and work, because they will take the ownership of your work. So you started with your own ownership. So now there can be a transformation. You take example of IIPS or Tata Institute of Social Science, CDS. They are working. They are with huge data, but almost all this data has a relationship with the government, the state agencies, different international agencies, because they are the sponsoring agencies. They are having huge funds. There are a lot of institutes, their strength is their funds, and funds created by the researchers. They do research, they get salaries, but the huge impact over the political economy, they're controlled by different agencies. Center for Development Studies, Trivandrum, it is a complete work with Gulf countries migrants. There is a external ministry of Kerala government, they are sponsoring huge funds, and there are teachers, there are researchers, they are working day and night to collect the information. But it has a relationship with state government because they are giving the funds. Earlier it was not. So now the question is that your data has a limitation till that publications, but once you are acknowledged by any agencies, then your data has a relationship with the political economy of the state. That is the important part. Otherwise, you can do work, you can publish it, you can do your academic and research works. There is no issue with that. But once it is a relationship with other agencies, funding agencies, publication sponsors, then that will create another dimension of your research.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes,
Actually,
good.
uh, it's my personal opinion. The common problem is maybe phase to relate the phenomena. You also said that uh, politics, propaganda, and mobilization, and natural science to social science. It's a relate natural science to social science, which may require the technique to interlink the problem and analysis a good result to current scenario, sir. Thank you.
Uh, uh, the idea when I put into the idea of Karl Popper, Thomas Kuhn, and Paul Faraman to criticize the existing dominant way of natural science research. Natural science research usually dominant in our society. When we started sociology or social science research, it's not be marginalized. Why? Because always the natural science, they defend their work from an objectivity or empirical work or universality or anything the scientific research. But once we follow the social science, that how the subjectivity has a relationship with better understanding of the society, that people must understand, the more subjectivity means more important. All the natural science, the rocket science, all these missile science, they're very much dominant in our mind. The layman who doesn't know about Karl Marx or M.N. Srinivas or any social science researchers, he or she thinks about always the natural science is important. In that context, why they are dominant? Because they do not give that democratic, liberal space to attach, to reconnect or connect. But the social science has given that space. So that is how we argue that the democracy has given a larger dimension to have a better society. It is because of the social science. Because social science gives that liberal option to interject, to interact, to communicate, to develop the idea of Habermas' way of understanding the communicative rationality. And this communicative rationality is a product of the social science because you communicate, you understand, you interpret, you debate and discuss, and that gives. Otherwise, natural science doesn't give that space. It's simply a technology, it's simply a dominant structure that controls our mind. But social science always give that liberal space, liberal thought to criticize, to reinterpret, to debate, to discuss, to re-examine, to re-understand, to rename, to reframe. And that is why we are better in that sense.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Said, sir, Assistant Professor, Department of Sociology, and Dr. Saroj, sir. So now it was an informative session today we have. Now I would like to call Nilofer. Please come on the stage and for vote of thanks. Thank you, sir. Thank you, participants. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum and a very good afternoon to all of you. On this wonderful afternoon, it's a matter of pride for me that I got a chance to stand here. I take this golden opportunity to thank our respected guest, Dr. Saroj Dhal, for delivering the lecture in the workshop in his busy schedule and sharing his insight and wisdom with all of us. We will cultivate the advice you gave us in our student and professional life. Thank you, sir. It's my pleasure to thank Dr. K.M. Zia, sir, and Dr. Syed Mew, sir, not only for organizing this workshop, but also for guiding us. Thank you, sir. We are also thankful to the director of IMC, Mr. Rizwan Ahmed, sir, and his entire team for telecasting the session. I thank all the participants for enthusiastically participating in this workshop. Last but not the least, I thank organizers for beautifully organizing the session. Without you all, this workshop would not be successful. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you.